everybody for joining. My name is Claire. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Abstract. And today's going to be fun. If you haven't heard John and Greg before, you're in for a treat because today is going to be entertaining, some tangents, some disagreements maybe, but a lot of fun and a lot of tips. So we have John Walter, COO at ZMax Inc., and host of the CX, AI, and Outsourcing podcast, as well as president of the Contact Center AI Association. So, John, please say hi.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. Greg and Claire, two of my favorite people in the industry. And so it's going to be fun.
Awesome. And we have, of course, Greg Reffner, the CEO and founder of Abstract. Greg, please, and he's the host of the Contact Center KPI podcast, if you haven't listened to that. So, Greg, say hi.
Yes, hello. John's been on our podcast. Excited to chat with you again, John. And I think that order, John, of Greg and Claire, your two favorite people, should have been Claire, then Greg, because I know Claire takes precedence in that list. So.
Always. Well, let's get started. John, I'm going to start with you. Really, this live event was I think, sparked by a post that you made talking about BPOs in the next 5 years and what to expect. So I thought maybe let's start a little bit with the challenges that BPOs are going through, and you can give a little background on that, and then we can kind of transition into the trends in tech.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time in the BPO industry. It's really cool that with all these recent advancements with large language models, that the core competency of human-like conversation is right at the core of what the outsource industry has been doing. And so we're just working in a very interesting industry at a very interesting time. And so the big challenge that BPOs are facing today is that they have historically been reluctant to embrace technology that enhances efficiency to the extent where it dramatically would reduce their revenue. But now this type of technology is becoming so accessible, even to the point where you see large enterprises starting, in many cases, to have preferences to build some of it internally, as we saw with Klarna, with the release of their generative AI chatbot. It's really becoming non-negotiable for BPOs to start jumping in aggressively. And it also raises a whole bunch of questions about what the industry will look like a few years from now. And if I had to really succinctly summarize what I think the overall customer support human agent landscape is going to look like, it's going to be based on ticket type. It's going to be what ticket types truly benefit from the presence of a human on the line, as compared to others where a human today is used because it is most feasible. It makes the most sense just from an implementation standpoint, but it might actually reduce the efficiency for the customer to resolve the issue. And so it's really just trying to break the industry into ticket types, understanding which ones will still have human agents for the long term, for not just the near future, but for the very long term, regardless of how advanced this technology becomes. And then what are the ticket types that are likely to get absorbed over the next 5 years, just as there are certain ticket types that over the past 5 years that were absorbed by the more traditional chatbots and by apps and other methods of self-help. So there's a lot of headwinds for the industry, but there's also a tremendous opportunity because there are some BPOs I've talked to are forecasting steady decline over the next 5 to 10 years, and then there's others that are growing significantly in this environment. And so it's not doom or gloom for the BPO industry, but it is certainly time of change in the industry.
Yeah, so I think of like Crossing the Chasm, that book called Crossing the Chasm, where you have your early adopters. But I almost feel like there's some forced early adoption here, and if you're not willing to adopt this change and kind of jump on board with this, either building it internally or externally, you're going to get left behind. And I mean, we probably talk with 2 or 3 BPOs a week who are trying to figure out what their AI strategy is, John. Very few of them are looking to build it in-house. So I'd be curious to know like how companies are deciding about in-house versus vendor. But the biggest thing they're struggling with is not necessarily do we need AI, it's how do we sell this as a value add or an operational cost decrease to justify it to our clients. Like they don't know how to communicate this out to the end client, which is what we're kind of seeing as like the blocker for a lot of these
Yeah.
BPOs.
Yeah. Very interesting point. That's always the big question, right? Is who's going to pay for it? And not all clients are going to want to their BPO to be an intermediary to AI technology. Some will, some won't. And what I think is going to happen over the next few years is that it's going to become essential for all BPOs to offer all of this technology. And with the exception of pure conversational AI, it's going to have to be baked into the price as an option to the client. The client's not going to need to take it, but it's going to need to be there. And and that's for several reasons. I can go into the reasons why I believe that. But there are going to be some BPOs that choose to build these capabilities internally, and the rest are going to need to use companies like yours to help them catch up to speed and just stay competitive. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to have to be baked into the cost by the BPO.
So, so there's like, again, the handful of conversations BPOs we have a week, margins are in some ways like you feel like it's a race to the bottom for some of these
Yeah,
BPOs trying to compete for some of these larger customers that are looking to outsource their contact centers. And so it's like if you already have razor slim margins, like how do you justify bringing on another vendor as a competitive advantage to then go and try to win a deal without increasing your price because you're leading on, hey, this is a price decrease. Yeah, how that's another struggle that our BPOs that we talk to every week are having is what like that cost and already slim margins. Like how do you balance that?
yeah, yeah. There does have to be a proven return on investment for the BPO, and what I think is going to be happening. And see, so there's different approaches. It depends on the technology. You can't just talk about AI technology at large. There's different categories and functionalities within the call center. Let's say everything from tech to help your agents get trained faster by having synthetic conversations that they can engage in that simulate real life, and so they get up to speed quicker. You have agent assist technology for once they're being live and in production, and that's when they come to companies like Abstract. And then you have the QA tools that is really low hanging fruit. A lot of people are building that type of stuff. And then you've got everything into the data analytics, the business intelligence, and then all the way over into the pure conversational AI, robotic process automation. There's a whole spectrum of tech. And so I think it's going to have to be how BPOs can differentiate themselves really is it's different for each category. And if it's conversational AI, for example, this is going to be BPOs that are embracing this technology. You have all these chatbot providers out there that are able to absorb a lot of the generic conversations, but these large chatbot providers are not going to build customizations for each ticket type for each company. And so there's a gap. And there are BPOs that will say, hey, we will do these types of tickets on a cost per resolution basis. We will bring in our own engineers and we will build these custom workflows and we will drive that efficiency. But because we're on a cost per resolution model, we're going to be able to capture more revenue and increase our profit margins by just driving the efficiency and leveraging conversational AI. But it's really up to the BPO to carry the engineering burden and the technology burden. But then when it comes to something, let's say like agent assist, where that play might not be as applicable, I think what's going to be happening is there are going to be, a client's going to go to several BPOs and say, you know, what is your AI strategy? Or even before they ask that question, this will be showcased. That's like, hey, we offer agent assist for no additional cost to our clients. And at first, it's going to be like one BPO that's doing it, and there's going to be two BPOs, and there's going to be three BPOs as part of that RFP process. And then it's going to get to a point where it's going to be expected.
Table
Just like
stakes.
there's currently other types of technology in the customer support landscape that it's expected for a BPO to have.
How far
Yeah.
out do you think we are from that?
I think we're going to see within. I was thinking about that. That's a good question, Claire. I think within 2 years, you're going to see this being offered, and then I think maybe another 2 years after that, it's going to be expected. That's just kind of like my horizon.
It makes me
Greg, what
think
do you
of
think?
the I'm gonna just copy what John said because John knows more about this stuff than I do. So 2 years. Um, um, it makes me think of the podcast that we did with Brian Jefferson. Automated when you want it human or automated. What was it? I forget exactly what he said. Hold
It
on.
was human when you want.
Digital when you want, human when you need it. Um,
Yeah,
and so kind of like again, I think John, you made a good point of different types of AI. I think so many folks think, oh, AI in the call center, and they don't realize there's actually subsegments of where AI can be deployed across that interaction. And so, again, the BPO needs to understand, break it up into phases, and then where does AI play a phase, and then, but it has still have the flexibility to offer, some type of humans along the way if the end client needs it, and the end customer needs it. Um,
yeah,
I think we're already seeing it though. I mean, within just the past year, the volume of conversations we're having has substantially increased. And so I do think it's sooner rather than later that this becomes table stakes. And if you want to have a competitive advantage on an RFP, to go out and win, a major healthcare customer, whoever, like, yeah, you need to understand it. You need to be able to articulate it, and see it needs to make sense in your cost model.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's
yeah.
interesting, and that's a very interesting point you bring up about AI when you want it and humans when you need it. The problem the industry has right now is that in many circumstances, the cost of human agent support does not justify the expense. And it unfortunately, bleeds into circumstances where there are actually the human, the presence of a human actually is critical. It's very important, but the company is still unable to get the human on the call because of how expensive it is and how complicated the industry is. And here's an example. I have a friend who somehow hackers got in through his PlayStation and started getting these random charges onto his account. And he was trying to get to the bottom of it. And so he called the the customer support for PlayStation, which is that who makes PlayStation? Is that Sony?
Tony.
Sony. So he tried to call the customer support for Sony, and the the phone line was a recording saying that they no longer offer voice support and to please resort to the digital channels. And that specific type of call where you have fraud occurring on your account, you have a flustered customer who doesn't know how deep the damage is, and there's actual money that's being siphoned out possibly as you speak. And then think about it. I mean, I don't know if this is just like canceling a card, or like they get in through your PlayStation, what else can they do? I don't
Yeah,
know. But
yeah.
that is a type of call where you need a human on the line. But because of the way the industry is currently structured, the company Sony was either unable or unwilling to fulfill that basic courtesy to a customer. And what I'm extremely hopeful for is that we're marching toward a time where high quality customer support is affordable and ubiquitous across all industries. And we're going to get there in part through BPOs that are capable of injecting human support in a very, very efficient manner. And so you have to start with the whole. It starts with the training. Even you can't have weeks and weeks of training to get an agent on. Like you have to shrink the training period down. You have to shrink the average handle time down. You have to every single call that does not draw significant benefit from having a human on the line. You need to bring as much automation into that as possible. And
I love
then
that.
once that's accomplished, then you're able to easily and affordably put the human in on the call where it's actually truly important. And there's this principle, and this was kind of the basis of the article I previously wrote. It's called Jevons paradox. It was economic theory that is referencing William Jevon, who was an 18th century, no, 19th century economist in England, and he wrote a lot about resource utilization. And there's this big fear at this time when he was writing that as machinery was becoming more efficient consumers of coal, and so not as much coal was needed to produce the same level of output of power, that there would be a drop in coal utilization. And what actually ended up happening is as these machines became more powerful, using less coal, more people became capable of purchasing coal. So more purchasers entered the marketplace. And so coal utilization actually increased over time. And I really think the same thing is going to happen in customer support, where for those specific ticket types, like so my friend who had fraud on his PlayStation, he's calling in the future, there should be and may be and is more likely to be than today a human than either nothing or AI. So yeah, for I think for BPOs that are targeting these specific ticket types and are getting the agents in there as efficiently as possible, I think there's tremendous potential.
It's interesting. For a long time, we heard like AI is going to replace people altogether. AI is going to replace people altogether. And what I'm hearing you say is it's going to enable a smaller number of agents to be more effective and deliver a higher level of service and support um, for those, again, specific ticket types, specific
Yeah.
questions, specific scenarios. So not getting rid of people, because even like I was thinking about that PlayStation scenario, John, even if the person can't help me as well or is equal to an AI chatbot, the fact that someone's hearing me is like, you can't put a measurement on that.
100%.
Like,
Yep.
my buddy, he has a Garmin watch. He's had it for like 3 years, and it stopped connecting to Wi-Fi. He called, went through the phone tree. Um, Person picked up and instantly was like, "Hey, we'll just send you a new one. Don't even worry about it." But he had to navigate through like 18 minutes of IBRs and
Mm.
waiting and stuff like that just to get to somebody who said, "Hey, let me check one thing. Great, we'll send you a new one." Um, he loved the human interaction piece, hated going through the phone tree piece, will
Yeah.
still be a Garmin customer, but like all it took was him talking to somebody and giving a couple pieces of information that the IVR should have caught. But again, the fact that he was able to talk to somebody solidified in his mind, hey, this is a company that I'm going to continue to represent on my wrist. Um,
Hmm.
and you don't get that if you try to get a support for an iWatch, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's just interesting again, just the fact that someone answered the phone as opposed to being forced into an automated process. Um, you know, build some customer loyalty there.
Yeah. That's a perfect example and a great point. There are certain call types where the mere presence of a human on the other end of the line significantly improves the customer experience. And it's a pretty narrow, honestly, it's a pretty narrow call type. These are calls where the customer is flustered, is angry, is emotional, and just the presence of a human is helpful, because I'm truly convinced that over time AI is going to become better at customer support than humans in most circumstances. I mean, it has outperformed the world's greatest chess players when people didn't think that was possible. Then it next outperformed the world's best Go players. I've never played Go, but I've heard it's much more complicated than chess. Many
What
people
is, hold
thought that
on,
was
let's go.
impossible.
Let's go.
Go is like the Chinese version of chess.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought my mind instantly went to Pokemon Go, and I was like, wait,
Oh,
how is this
that's
AI?
yeah, that's a fun game too. That's about as sophisticated my intellectual game skills go, as
Okay.
Pokemon Go, but and I think it's more sophisticated than Chinese checkers, which is kind of I'm not too good at that either. But I even saw a news story about the U.S. military recently they had a fighter jet. I think it was an F-16 that they had operated by AI, and they had a human pilot in the cockpit. But they did a mock dogfight between an AI operated F-16 and a human operated F-16, And to my knowledge, they did not release the results just for national security purposes, but they did disclose that they were running that test. And so, I mean, if, dude, Teslas can navigate Atlanta traffic, then they can navigate most phone calls. It's just, these machines can navigate most phone calls. It's just a matter of time. But the big question is, what are the call types where no matter how advanced these technologies become, the human empathy and understanding, even because these machines, they're gaining the ability to sound empathetic and to understand tonation and changes in cadence and to really interpret emotion a lot better. But just, at the end of the day, you're talking to a bot. And so
So it's
I think it's important.
interesting. One more example, small tangent. We've been trying to figure out what's going on with my son for a couple of years now. Finally went and got some tests. Couldn't get into a doctor to save our life.
Hmm.
One day I was like, let me throw these 8 different tests into ChatGPT
Mm-hmm.
and see what comes out of it. Within 10 seconds, it was like, this is what you should go do next. Here's the likely thing that you need to, that you're kind of be looking for. Here's how to make immediate, boom, 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 boom. Like instantly helped get us pointed in the right direction. I still wanted to talk to a doctor. I still
Mm-hmm.
wanted someone to verify that information with, because I don't know if I trust the machine as much. But like again, great utilization of technology, but I still want to talk to somebody because it didn't fill the gap in my mind of what I needed to know. Um, so yeah, I think there's a blend. It's going to be a blend that
Yeah.
all BPOs need to have.
And here's another, it's kind of like what you're pointing out is it's all about the customer. Like in your circumstance, like frankly, who cares how many doctors that ChatGPT displaces if it helps your son?
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
this is all about the customer. This is all about the patient. We go into business to serve people, and any technology that helps us do
Mhm.
that better, we need to fully embrace and to do as much as we can to make sure nothing bad happens. But we can't. It's ultimately selfish for somebody to say, "Oh, I don't want to use this technology because it's going to reduce my revenue through helping the customer so much. It's going to make my clients so efficient that I'm going to make less money from my clients. I'll be able to extract less money from my clients." That's not a long-term winning business strategy. That is a strategy that focuses on short-term quarterly results, and it's going to lead to long-term demise of an organization.
I love that. I think that's the mic drop moment right there, Claire. It's all about the customer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
it's a good segue. I think the last thing for the audience is trying to give, where do they start? So if you were to give one piece of advice to a BPO leader, maybe who is either afraid of implementing AI because of all the different costs and maybe their customers might not like latch onto it, or they're let's do all this AI. We love this. There's two different sides of the spectrum, right? If you were to give one piece of advice to either of those, where should they start? John, you
Yeah,
want to
that's
go
a great
first?
question. That's a great question. Greg, do you want to take a stab? I've got some thoughts, but
um, I'm just going to piggyback off what you said, John, and I think it's something that I didn't ever really think about up until this conversation, is you need to break up what does AI mean into the different parts of the customer journey. That's what
mhm.
so many folks that we talk to, I don't think they've done. They see AI as this like ambiguous thing that they need to work into their workflow and their agents' lives and how they build in the margins. Like, take it off one bite at a time. Like, is it chat support? Is it agent assist? Is it post call automation? Is it after work automation? Like, break it up into chunks and then evaluate where the biggest needle mover is for your company with the lowest amount of effort. I mean, that's a takeaway that I didn't even really think about until this conversation that I would give everybody listening to this.
That's very interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I would also just piggyback on that, saying that it's start with your customers. Call your current clients and say, "Hey, we are," and be transparent with them. And don't try. Don't. I think a big mistake that a lot of BPOs have right now is that they're putting on a veneer of AI when in reality they're not really doing much with it. And I think they need to humbly go to their clients and say, what are you thinking? What are you doing? I'm not trying to resell you anything. Get out of that resell mindset. Just say like, hey, where do you see the greatest, how can I help you the most? And I think what you're going to realize, I think in some cases, there's going to be clients who want to offload the risk of R&D, and they want to offload the risk of making mistakes to a BPO, and allow a BPO to be more forward thinking perhaps than the internal organization. But secondly, start to look at it by ticket type, and try to narrow down. This will require investment of time and resources from your organization to stay ahead of the game. But it's similar. I mean, imagine if you had a client who was saying, "Hey, we want to go open a new facility in the Philippines," and you didn't. Let's say you didn't have a facility in the Philippines, and you're going to say as an organization, it's like, "Oh no, we don't want to make that capital investment to the Philippines. That's too much, for one reason or another." It's kind of similar. AI is the next progression of driving efficiency in the industry. It's no longer just making geographic changes. There's going to be some investment, initial upfront capital to get this rocking and rolling. And just focus on ticket types. Make investments into driving efficiencies and ticket types that you expect to be here 10 to 15 years from now, not ticket types that are going to be consumed next year.
So on that note, the whole investment, I mean, if we remove us, Abstract as a company from the equation, like I think that, a lot of the vendors in the space have been doing this for longer than AI has been the cool thing to talk about, and they've probably forgotten more than you as the BPO will ever know when it comes to how to deploy this stuff. And so when you look at like upfront investment, I would argue that, work with folks that have already made the mistakes. They've
Yeah.
already learned the hard way around what not to do, as opposed to trying to build it yourself. Yes, there's tools available out there, but I mean, I just think of all 400 iterations of our failed product the first 2 years, And so I just, I have a hard time seeing like, building it in-house, like go find the experts in your industry to lean on, because they've broken more stuff than you'll ever fix when it comes to building some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think some of the bigger BPOs are going to build internally because they have the budget and they already have like large technical staff. And but the smaller to mid-sized BPOs, I think they're primarily going to be relying on companies like Abstract to stay competitive.
Mm.
And it might be a different, and for you at Abstract, I know that most of your clients today are end users and not BPOs, and so it may be a different pricing model for you as an organization at Abstract for go to market when it comes to the BPO industry, and it may be a totally different form of relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we look at our BPOs as like partners, like a distributor, like they're a
Yeah,
distribution layer for us, and so they have a different pricing model to allow them to bake it into their margins. But still they a lot of them still struggle to communicate that value to the end client. Still, going back to the beginning of this conversation, that's the struggle where a lot of like our early BPO adopters are still like, hey, we have this, let's demo it. Now we don't really know how to communicate the value, and we try to help, and there's just some resistance there.
yeah. I just recommend staying persistent on those current BPO relationships and staying in contact with them, because I literally think it's just a matter of time until it's just going to be expected for them to stop worrying about how they're going to resell it and just start offering it.
Yeah,
It's just going to have to be
yeah,
baked in
yeah.
to
Yeah.
what they do.
Chicken or the egg, right? You
Mm.
gotta pull the trigger on it, and if you want to stay competitive, pull the trigger on it and just bake it in.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, great conversation, you guys. I don't even think you needed me to help navigate it. You navigated it yourselves. But if you are listening and watching this, feel free to reach out to Greg, reach out to John if you have additional questions. And if they don't answer you, you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to coordinate that as well. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I will be sending this recording out as well. All right. Thank
Thank
you
you, Claire.
guys.